Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It's 8:07. It's our fourth hour here, and we're all fired up to finish strong. If you missed any of our first 3 hours of Radio Excellence, please download the podcast. You should subscribe. Everywhere you like your podcast, you'll find us. It's O'Connor and Company. Coming up in 30 minutes, Montana Attorney General Austin Knudsen, he, along with 22 other attorneys general, are trying to implore the EPA to stop funding climate lawfare being financed with your tax dollars. We'll get to the bottom of that coming up in 30 minutes. I'm Larry O'Connor alongside Julie Gunlock. Good morning, Julie.
Good morning.
Yesterday and earlier today, we were discussing this very curious announcement from President Trump that he wants to increase by almost threefold the number of Chinese nationals who can attend our colleges. These, of course, are people who come to America with the blessing and encouragement of the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. And we thought to ourselves, well, that doesn't seem like a smart thing to do. That doesn't make any sense, and that doesn't seem like America first. We got to get Gordon Chang to explain this to us. Gordon Chang, author of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, is now with us. Good morning, Gordon.
Good morning, Larry and Julie, and thank you so much.
We've had conversations in the past, and I have read your book, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Beijing's intent on being involved in our college campuses through funding projects and think tanks and all of that activities, as well as getting students connected to the communist government in our classrooms and participating in our higher education, that's all sort of part of Plan Red, China's project to destroy America, isn't it?
Well, it certainly is. And what we see is that where there are any concentration of Chinese students, you have either Chinese consular officials or Ministry of State Security agents monitoring, coercing, and surveilling students. So if we're going to increase the number of students from 277,000 to 600,000, then we're going to have more MSS agents in our country because China is not going to allow them to come here unless they monitor them. And that means we're going to have more agents and operatives from Beijing on American soil.
Okay. Surely President Trump knows that. I know he does because his Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, in May signaled that he wanted to ramp back and start deporting and revoking visas for students tied to the Communist Party and tied to the Chinese government. So what gives here, Gordon?
You'd have to ask President Trump that. I suspect that he's thinking about trade, that there is, of course, a big trade effect from having all of these students in our country because we're providing services. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, says that if we don't do this, the bottom 15% of American institutions will go bankrupt. But, on the other side of it, there's two things. As you say, this is not America first. America first is educating Americans, and every space that goes to a Chinese student, or a student from any other country for that matter, is one fewer space for Americans. But also we know that the Communist Party, as I mentioned, coerces Chinese students, and sometimes they coerce them to commit acts of espionage against our country. And the amount of data theft from Chinese students is substantial. Nobody really knows what percentage of Chinese students commit acts of espionage, but I've seen one estimate that says 13%, and to me that sounds credible. But whatever it is unacceptable.
It's one thing for President Trump to say, okay, we're going to have 600,000 students in this country, but he didn't just say that. He made it seem like everything is great with China. He said that. He said, I have a great relationship with President Xi. We have a great relationship with China. Everything's going to be great with China. It was a very rosy picture he painted. And then to hear you say all of this espionage that happens and agents here with these students, I mean, it is not a rosy picture. Can you explain again, is this some sort of diplomatic effort to make it sound better than it actually is?
I guess it is. But as you point out, our relations with China are certainly worse than they have ever been. We'd have to go back to the Eisenhower years to find a time when it was more disadvantageous to the United States. We have 1.2 million American COVID deaths. China deliberately spread the disease beyond its borders once it broke out into the Chinese population. We can argue about the numbers, but any number above zero is unacceptable. We have tens of thousands of deaths from fentanyl each year, and we know that the Communist Party is behind and supports these fentanyl sales into the United States. So these are acts of murder, Julie. We can go on and on, but our relationships with China right now should not be portrayed as rosy. And although I know President Trump wants to portray this as good, but his relationship with Xi Jinping is not the way he describes it.
We're speaking with Gordon Chang. He's our favorite expert on all things Pacific Rim and certainly the government of China, and he's also the author of Plan Red, China's Project to Destroy America. Follow him on X, Gordon G. Chang. Gordon, who is sort of driving China policy right now in the Trump administration? Is it Commerce Secretary Lutnick? Gordon? Did we lose you?
Must have.
Oh, it seems like we lost Gordon.
Lost him.
All right. Shoot.
The Chinese.
Exactly. Well, yeah. I was trying to figure out exactly who's driving this, because if it is Commerce Secretary Lutnick, I mean, by definition, he's the Commerce Secretary. So he views everything having to do with our relationship with China through the lens of commerce and sales and trade and the economy. And I understand that that's a big deal. And I know we've got major corporations who are manufacturing there, and I know that there's a lot of money in retail here. I get that. But that's not the entirety of our relationship with them. In fact, it's kind of secondary on the grand scheme of things, considering the way they've increased their military spending. Any expert you talk to about China's military spending will tell you that they ramp up, and everything they've invested in is meant to wage war against the United States of America.
And allies.
And our allies.
And her allies. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Taiwan is in... there's a lot of worry about Taiwan right now. And will it fall to China, and when will the attacks come? I mean, I think Trump's position of aggressiveness is certainly better than Biden's, but China is on the warpath for sure.
Let's, if we could, Jeff, no worries. We lost Gordon Chang. That's fine. We don't need to worry about trying to connect with him again. Let's go to Cut 27. This is the president yesterday at the cabinet meeting when concerns were raised. And, people have been, like we have been saying, hey, maybe this isn't the best idea. Because, again, I want to remind everybody, as of now, I believe it's like 280,000 Chinese students in this country. Mm-hmm. And, again, you don't leave China unless you have permission from the government. So by definition... They are all here at the behest of the Chinese Communist Party.
And we're going to triple that?
I'm not saying all of them are spies. I'm not saying that. I'm not painting with a broad brush.
I'll go ahead and say
it. And so let's just listen to the president yesterday at the cabinet meeting at pushing back on the idea that maybe this isn't a good idea to increase this to 600,000.
We're getting along very well with China, and I'm getting along very well with President Xi. I think it's very insulting to say students can't come here, because they'll go out, they'll start building schools, and they'll be able to survive it. But I like that their students come here. I like that other countries' students come here. And you know what would happen if they didn't? Our college system would go to hell very quickly.
All right, we've got Gordon back. I have one more question for Gordon. We'll ask him in a moment, and then we'll also talk about the latest D.C. crime issues here as Judge Jeanine Pirro, your U.S. attorney, made an announcement. We'll play that for you in a moment.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
And we've reconnected with Gordon. I'm sorry, Gordon, I had one more question for you. It seems like Commerce Secretary Lutnick is driving our policies with China, and I get that. Obviously, trade is a big deal, and, retail cheap T-shirts at Walmart is a big deal. But, I mean, shouldn't everything be shot through a military, strategic defense sort of lens? Who is sort of running the China policy?
Larry, I think it's President Trump, because President Trump runs all of his policies. And, when he has great ideas, and he doesn't going to have this interagency process. He just says what he thinks, and almost all the time, he says great things and he implements them. But unfortunately, every once in a while, we need to have someone stand up and say, Mr. President, this is wrong. You should not do this. And unfortunately, nobody in the administration, as far as I can tell, does that. So that's why we get statements about 600,000 Chinese students, which has outraged American people and outraged MAGA world. This is just wrong.
Yep. So you said it well. You want to jump in real fast?
And really quickly, and Gordon, it's not just wrong. I mean, it's primarily wrong on a national security level, but also, I'm the mom of 3 boys that are just about to launch into this. We're going through the college stuff right now. They're still in high school, but we're going through and I would like those 600,000 spots in American colleges to be reserved for Americans. That is another thing that I think angers and that's exactly what you said, that it's angering MAGA, it's angering America First people. But this is just a kick in the gut to parents who are already struggling with sort of the problems with higher education, and then you have this. It's truly unfair.
Yeah, it is.
It is unfair. And it's not good for our future, because our future is going to be determined by Americans. And if we can't educate Americans, then we're in trouble, because what we're doing is we're educating those from a regime that hates us. We have to be very clear about what the Communist Party says about us when they think we're not listening. But clearly they they call us an enemy. And we got to take that into account. We should not be training the cadre of our enemy.
I agree. They're going to get their STEM degrees, their science degrees, their mechanical engineering degrees. They're going to go back to China and design a weapons system for a nuclear submarine that'll attack our nation and put our military in harm's way. I don't get it. Gordon Chang, we got to leave it there. It's always great to talk with you. Our best to Lydia.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks, Julie.
Thanks.
All right, it's 8:19 now. Let's turn to an update on the crime situation in D.C. I'm sorry to say that it turns out there has been a homicide. So we made it 12 days, which, by the way, is a stunning achievement in the summer. Judge Jeanine Pirro, your U.S. attorney, made another announcement yesterday on social media. Let's take a listen to that.
It is Tuesday, August 26th. It is Judge Jeanine. Here I am in the District of Columbia. And last night, 86 arrests on the surge. 4 guns were seized, bringing us up to 1,094 arrests since the surge started, and 115 guns that have been taken off the street and not capable of being used in further crimes. And by the way, an additional pearl here, not a single carjacking in over a week. So we continue to fight the fight to make sure that people in D.C. are safe. And I got to tell you something. I was watching the news this morning, and someone was complaining that Americans really are not concerned about carjacking. I think that they need to reconnect with the Americans who are living in D.C. and all around the country who don't want to be carjacked and forget the nonsense of making believe that this isn't a real problem. It is a real problem, and President Trump is cleaning it up.
All right, and by the way, the person who was saying people don't care about carjacking, that was a Democrat, of course, trying to distract. But I mentioned this the other day, and let me just be clear. One of the things that's going to happen here is that crime is down across the board, every stat here in Washington, D.C. Criminals aren't stupid. Wes Moore in Maryland has said, oh, yeah, we're not going to do that. No, we're not going to do anything like that. We don't want any of that enforcement of the law here. So now crime is going to increase right across the Anacostia in Prince George's County. And here's a local ABC 7 report yesterday. Listen to what happened in Prince George's County.
MLK and Sheriff.
MLK and Sheriff, vehicles on fire.
I copy.
That urgent call came in from dispatchers around 3:45 p.m. Sources tell 7 News juveniles, 4 of them, stole this brown car and were heading into D.C. when they allegedly ran a red light and hit the mother and child inside this silver car. The baby, just 2 years old, according to sources, survived, while the mom didn't make it.
There you go. So that carjacking didn't take place in D.C. It took place in Prince George's County because Wes Moore wants to run for president, and he wants to grandstand and thump his chest and say, I'm not like Trump. I'm not an authoritarian. Yeah, well, tell the children who now don't have a mother. Where's the compassion?
Yeah.
if we have time a little later, I want to play with. It was a really dramatic moment yesterday where a reporter thanked President Trump at the cabinet meeting for cracking down on crime because she had been attacked. She had been pistol whipped outside her apartment. She was robbed. She was a reporter in the White House pool, and she was a victim of these crimes. It's a great, dramatic, emotional moment. We'll try to get to you in a moment. First, though, it's 8:23.